Okay, so yeah, welcome. My name is Josie. I'm a content designer and I'm joined by Martin, who is an accessibility specialist. Feel free to join us on Twitter. We're going to be talking about icons. Are they evil or genius? As we sent in the session summary, icons are used in lots of different ways throughout websites, apps, and communication methods like emails or social media, or in software messaging, or even on forms sometimes, or success messages, lots of different places. They usually communicate some meaning, and they can often be actionable, which means that you can select them and they'll do something. But is that useful, or are they actually a pain? So I'm going to hand over to Martin, who's going to talk to us about Sage and accessibility.
Yeah, thanks, Josie. Hi, everybody. Yeah, I'm Martin, and I also work at Sage. Me and Josie often team up when there's some accessibility bat signal or something like that that needs to be attended to. It's been quite exciting. I've been at Sage for about a year, and before me, there wasn't any focus on or anybody who would have any real expertise in accessibility. So they're really doubling down on it. And I was the first of a couple of specialists that have joined on the accessibility front. And there's more to come, and there's budget being released and all that kind of thing, and lots more going on in the company to do with equality and inclusivity. So accessibility is a subset of inclusivity or inclusive design. And it's basically a way of ensuring that everybody can use our products. We don't want to be excluding anybody, basically. We have a long way to go with this. We know that there's a lot of work, and I think that was one of the things that attracted me to the role, was just the sheer size and sort of the task at hand. We're on the road and we're doing some great things, and there's some real advocacy and awareness growing within the company. We're focusing on education and awareness throughout different teams and all that kind of thing, looking at actually making a practical difference as well. So looking at what blockers there are, how we can unblock those in terms of maybe somebody with a screen reader can't complete a task. We need to make sure that they can. It might not be the nicest experience yet, but as with all things UX, we're doing things iteratively. We're making the fixes with the biggest impact, and we're making ones that also kind of, quick wins where we can, small wins and all that kind of thing. But there's been a huge focus on community as well, so getting everybody involved. It's not my job to make all these changes. It's kind of my job to get people a little bit more interested and inspired about accessibility, and then to kind of make those changes. I say my job. Josie's been a huge advocate as well. So yeah, we're doing okay in Sage. It's a good place to be. Yeah, our focus here is on icons, which are everywhere, and we want to make sure we're using them in the most accessible way possible. In Sage, we don't always do that. It's very much on the to-do list. So yeah, without further ado, let's take a dive into what we can do and what the problems are and how to fix them.
Thank you. Okay, so this is I've run this session before, or like an earlier version of this session in the Accessibility Guild, which is a group that Martin runs, where lots of people like me kind of dive in and try and push those changes forward, basically. And this is a session where I asked people to describe what the icons mean, or what would happen if the user selected them. And this is a huge table that you can only see part of it here. Sorry that it's a little bit blurry. I hope everyone can see it. And the icons up here do something. You wouldn't necessarily guess that based on the kind of the fact that they're kind of grey a little bit. But they do things, and I wanted to see whether people could understand what they were. This isn't user testing, of course, because this is just our colleagues, but it was interesting to see. So I asked people to put post-it notes next to them. This one you can see lots of switch and shuffle and move and swap, changing orders, shuffle, not sure, shuffle, question mark, reverse, change something. So we don't really know what's happening, and we don't know what it's happening to either. This one we have send and export and share, but we also have upload. So there's like bringing things in, taking things out. The opposite of download, upload something, save to something. So, and which is my favorite one. So we're not really sure what's going on there. This one we have a copy, lots of copy, and we have some duplicate as well. Copy an item, copy, but what? We don't really know. So that one's a bit more clear that we're going to be copying and potentially making a duplicate, but we still don't know to what because it doesn't really tell us anything. And on this one, which is my favorite, we've got lots of deletes and we have some removes. We have delete an item, and we also have delete permanently, which kind of raises more questions than it answers, because it could be, I don't know, temporarily, not sure. It makes me wonder. And we also have more nouns. So we have like trash for America, and bin and trash can, and this one here is garbage. So although there's a general idea there of what it's going to do, you know that whatever you've selected, you click this afterwards and it's going to delete it basically. But if you were using speech recognition technology, how would you know what to say? So you speak to your computer and it would do the click for you, usually for people who can't actually action the click. So you'd say, select delete. No. Okay, select remove. No. Okay, select bin. And you just have to go around the houses basically and try to guess what it was until it worked. So obviously that's not very cool. So I showed people then what they actually mean. And I'll start again in the same places. So this one here kind of has, on hover, it kind of has like this label that sticks up, but only when you're hovering. And there's no way to make it stay there. This one is called switch status. So switch was correct for lots of people. But we still like, what is the status? I think what it means is like active or inactive, but it still doesn't tell us that. And that's partly because it's in this kind of tooltip icon. So you can only get a certain amount of information in there. And if you think about this hover scenario, if anyone has motor issues, so for example, if you had a tremor, so I'll just move my mouse so you can kind of see what a tremor might look like. And I'll stop in case anyone's seasick from that, sorry. It might be really difficult to hover over that and to keep it there in order to see the label. So there's lots of different problems with this. And this one in the design system, I actually couldn't find it, so I don't know what it's called. Whereas on here, we had this, which is called export. So again, about half the people were right. But in the design system, it's called arrow up line. So it could really be used for anything. And in a previous iteration, we actually had this document. They're in a different order, but most of them are the same, if you can see, except that they changed the document sort of icon for the arrow up line. And I guess that's because it's export a document, but that's not what the label says, and it's still not very useful. So we've got different icons floating around for the same thing, potentially. And here we've got duplicate. So this is always the same icon, but it means something different. So in the design system, it says duplicate. And on here, we've chosen the word copy. And those are kind of similar, but copy implies that you need to paste for it to be somewhere else. And duplicate kind of means that a copy has been created immediately. So they are different, and we need to be careful that we're doing the right thing. Duplicate is also kind of a difficult word, really. And even then, copy what, and where's it going to go, and where do I need to paste it, and how do I paste it? It's still so many questions to be answered. And back to my favourite, bin. It's called bin in the design system, but here it's called delete. And because we don't have sort of actionable labels for these in our design system, it means that it's down to the designers to decide what that label is going to be, and therefore it's bound to be inconsistent. So some people might choose remove and some people might choose delete. So that's just going to make it more difficult when a voice recognition technology user comes along and says, I've seen this before, I know it's delete, and this time it's remove, and they'll say, I'm stuck. So that's kind of the problem with that kind of thing. And so maybe a solution there is that we can decide at a higher level that this means delete and this means copy, for example, and put that into our design system. And then when we use them in each place, not only do we always have the same icon for the same action, but we'll also have the same labels. So that's kind of something that we could do. Now I'm going to give you a break from my voice, and I'm going to show you a bit of a clip of a podcast. So it's Ally Rules podcast. And I'm just going to grab that. Where do you live? Where have you gone? Oh, I've lost it. Perfect. The magic of a web. Oh, here we go. I found it. It's all good. Okay, so I hope you can hear this. Tell me if you can.
What is your disability or your impairment?
So I actually call myself multiply disabled. For me, it means I both have multiple medical conditions and multiple limitations attached to them. And I can't really separate them out, generally speaking. For me, it's definitely all one picture. But today, I'm really here to talk about my primary disability, which is Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. And it's a connective tissue disorder that causes frequent and mostly painful subluxations and dislocations of all of my joints in my entire body. There are no exclusions. In particular, my left shoulder is so bad that my left arm goes numb or gets shooting pains whenever I try to use it for any repetitive task. And naturally, I'm sure most people can guess that would make it really hard to use a keyboard.
And a mouse?
Yeah, luckily I do have use of my right hand mostly. It does get tired after a while, but I am fortunate enough to use a mouse when I am facing blockers on the web, and not everyone has that as an option.
What's your solution if you can't use a keyboard or not readily a mouse all the time? What kind of assistive technology do you use?
Yeah, so it took a while to find the right fit for me, and there aren't a lot of perfect technologies out there, but for me, speech recognition and specifically Dragon Naturally Speaking was the best fit for me, because Dragon has macros and I can set it up to really work with me rather than against me. And not all other speech recognition has that versatility.
Yeah. So you spoke about blockers. What would be your greatest barrier on the web?
I have many, but if I had to pick one, I would say it's a lack of visual labels or a mismatch between the visual label and the accessible name of the label. In particular, old versions of Dragon also require that the first word of the actual accessible label be the visual label. Otherwise, I have no idea how to interact with or click buttons or form fields or even certain types of links.
How does that work with links or buttons that are image only, like a magnifying glass for a search form, or I guess social media images like Facebook or Twitter are fairly straightforward, but we find a lot of images as the only content of an actionable item. How do you end up interacting with that if you have to guess at what the label is?
Honestly, not very well. Fortunately, there does seem to be some common language and some common icons. So for me, if I see a house icon that's meant to be for the home page, I can pretty reliably say home and click on that link, because the link text that's not visible is home. I do the same thing for mobile menus. I can say menu or main menu or mobile menu and it works. But occasionally some people try to get fancy and they have an accessible name of toggle navigation. And there's no way I could guess that. I think my favorite example, though, is the trash can for a remove or delete icon. I have had to guess so many different accessible names, from remove to cancel to delete to trash. So I often jokingly say when I'm trying to tell people how to do better, icon only buttons are trash. And then I use the trash icon as an example.
So that's Tori explaining there what we've shown in that experiment that we did in our accessibility guild. So this is what she says: icon only buttons are trash, and I love that. I live by that now. Further on in that podcast, they discuss about aesthetics and how you can make things accessible without ruining kind of the visual design of UI, because that's often one of the problems that comes up. They also talk about other benefits to text labels, cultural understanding of colour, and different assistive technologies as well. So I would recommend that you listen to the whole of that. It's only a little bit longer, and we'll give you the link to that at the end. So I would like, if you don't mind, I would like you to join me to play bingo, if that's something you like to do. I'm going to put the link in the chat so that you can, if it works, so that you can play with us. Of course, everything's going wrong. Why wouldn't it, right? So I'll send you this link, and it should give you, where is the chat? It should give you your own bingo card, and you'll have different words on there. I'll show you mine. Different words on there. So we're going to show some icons, and I want you to mark off. You just select it, and you mark off when you've got the icon. So let me know. I have no idea to tell, so I'm hoping that everyone's opening that up and everything's fine. Everything all right? In, good. We've got Millie in at least. Someone's playing. Works nicely. You've got it. Thank you very much for telling me. Cool, good. I'm going to get on with this then. So I'm going to move one of these at random. I won't do them all. And if you've got it on your card, you mark it off. Okay. So I'll just zoom in. And here is number 1. So who has got this? Feel free to shout out if you like. I'll go on to the next one. Got it. Ooh, Ian's got it. Who's got this one? Ooh, that's not good. This one here. Jake's got it. Stop being so clever and getting it. Tell me you don't know what it is. Maybe. Thank you, Jack. Because I don't know what it means. Who has got this one? Emma's not sure. What does it mean? Have you got it? I don't know. Yeah. Broken phone. It does look like a broken phone. That's new on me. How about this one? Who's got that? Exploding rectangle. I hate it when rectangles explode. Probably. Yeah, too right, Sarah. I'm not sure either. This one, who's got this one? Could it be a bell? Could it be a notification? Could it be last orders at the bar? It's a while since I've experienced that. What's this one? If you've got it, mark it off. Is anyone else stressed? A shop, unlink. Yeah. Head with a huge hat. Yeah, it could be. This is more fun. Ruth, I like that. Tiny policeman in a big hat. Yes, thank you. Okay. You're all with me. It's good. This one, that's a pin on the map. We all know that one. I'm guessing that's location. But what the hell is that? I have no idea. If you've got it, mark it off. I wonder if I've got it. I don't think I've got it. Guitarist. I don't know how you've got that, but I like it. Okay, so you can see the chaos. I like it. So we've no idea really what some of these means. We can guess. And if you saw them, you definitely wouldn't know what the label was behind it. So like Tori was saying, we'd really struggle. So that's just, I hope you're as stressed as me. That is kind of to illustrate the problems that Tori was talking about. And I guess as we go forward, we can like remember this and hope that we can start to either label things better or just choose better icons than exploding rectangles, and see where we go from there. Has anyone got bingo yet? Shall I carry? I'll go on. I'll carry on. Someone's got to get bingo at some point. There's that one. Audrey's competitive. There's this one. Anyone yet? There's this one. Stacks of rectangles. 3 more to go. How about this one? The Colosseum, right? 2 more. Jack's going to win. This one, free Wi-Fi, yeah? Or is it? It's not. I'm being facetious. I know it's not. Or this one, that's got to be search. And the last one, someone must have bingo. The last one is, I don't know, someone creeping up behind someone else. Not sure. You got it? Bingo, Jack's won. Oh, Martin. Lizzie as well. Okay, we've all won. The bad news is there's no prizes, but thank you for playing. And yes, I'm going to move on. That was really fun. Bingo. Everyone's got bingo at once. Okay, so I'm going to move on to some of the solution, or part of it at least. So what we can do to make things better is that we can enhance icons with text. It's actually really simple. So you just place the words next to the icon within the link. And in terms of voice recognition, like Tori was saying, the label then allows anyone using voice technology to select the button easily because they know what it is, they don't have to guess. Screen readers, I'm not going to read this out because it makes me sound like a robot, but this is what they would read out for hotels. And that then makes sense. That makes sense for the way that those screen readers normally read things out. And for visual enhancement, using good icons alongside text labels, so it's not just not just the text label, because obviously that is harder. It's harder to read, it's harder to see, it's boring, man. We need some fun in life, don't we? So using the icons next to the text can give information to sighted users instantly, but it doesn't put a barrier to anyone who can't see. And users with difficulty reading, like dyslexia, will deduce the meaning from the icon and can consult the text labels as necessary. So where some people might just be able to scan and it's no excuse me, where some people might be able to scan and it's no problem, other people might need to scan the images and then say, okay, I will read this one, hotels, okay, rather than having to read them all. And icons add visual interest, yeah, much more easy. And the click area. So the button and label combined encourage a bigger click area. So if you can see on this hotel here, it's really small, and that's what the click area sort of would be expected to be. But if you add the label, the text label, I'm sorry, my voice is going. Apologies, this is ridiculous. You add the label as well, and the click area gets bigger. So it's just easier to use. And again, back to that person who might have a tremor or some other kind of motor issue, it's a bigger thing to be able to click on than a smaller thing that's harder. And it's easier for touch devices too. I don't have particularly fat fingers, but I can't click on anything on my phone that's the right thing. I'm always clicking on the wrong thing. But we do have to make sure that the click area isn't too big, because if we make it sort of on here, it's kind of higher and lower than you might expect. And if you click on something else and this is actually what's active, you're going to end up somewhere you don't want to go. Or for me on my phone, when I'm scrolling and I expect to accidentally click on something, which I always do, I'll try and put my finger in a gap where there's nothing there, so then I can't just end up somewhere random. But if this is bigger than you think and I click here because I don't think it's going to be active, I'm going to end up on bars and I don't want to be on bars. So that's a bit about click area. And now I'm going to hand over to Martin.
Thanks, Josie. It's also worth mentioning that it's not just users with motor issues that we fix, or any other issue like that that we fix things for. It's also people who might be on their phone in the back of the car or something, and it's the road's bumpy. So that really nice side effect of accessibility, which benefits are the people who are looking to benefit, but then also or include, and then benefits everyone else in a kind of a nice way as well. So, but yeah, the icons decoration is an interesting one. When you pair them with text, you're often reinforcing the meaning of the text rather than delivering that meaning in and of itself. So this is an example here of an icon being used alongside some text from this year's census. So yeah, it's an exclamation mark. I think this is a kind of a GDS pattern. That's an exclamation mark that's used to draw attention to some text. So on the left-hand side, it's just that, the big exclamation mark in a circle with the text to its right. And on the right-hand side, there's the same image, but without that. The meaning is exactly the same. It doesn't lose anything, although it does help to draw the eye. So yeah, 6 and 2 3s really. So the idea is that if we're designing and building for people with that use a screen reader, then we can reduce a little bit of noise by making sure we hide those icons in a non-visual to non-visual users. So visually they're useful, but in actual fact, if you're reading through this page with a screen reader, things can be noisy. So you need to kind of keep that, you know, respect your kind of user's experience really there and make sure that they get as nice a time as possible. So yeah, you can just remove that icon. For those of you that are geeks like me and you like a little bit of HTML, then you could use a role of presentation on it, or you could use aria hidden equals true. Kind of 6 and 2 3s, depending on how far back you need to support browsers and things. But yeah, without going too far into the geekery of all that, yeah, just make sure if your icon's not adding anything extra, then get it, make sure it's hidden. Yeah.
Cool. So I'll move on. So down to icon only buttons, which we touched on before, because it's kind of a similar example here. We call them tooltips, which actually is new to me, to Sage, in Sage, but I'm sure they have other names, or maybe you call them tooltips too. And here are some of kind of the problems with them. We use them quite a lot, and we are moving away from them, which is really good. But often they have different solutions as well. We use them in loads of different scenarios. So one of the problems with them is that they make users hover. I've discussed that already. So it's a bad way to show information. Mouse users who have motor issues can struggle to hover consistently. And even if you are using a keyboard and it will focus when you tab across to that and shows you the information, what about touchscreen users or those using speech recognition, as we've talked about before? They cover other information. So covering other stuff makes it harder to understand what the tooltip's doing in the context of the screen and consider what you might want to do next. So on this one here, I'd actually hovered here. So sorry, because this is super blurred. And I think that's because the blurred on the site as well, which I was not impressed with this one when I stole it. But I was hovering here, and you can't actually tell because it doesn't kind of link to that. I guess maybe the outline on this side is supposed to do that. I'm not sure. But I could be hovering on any of these for all I know. And I mean, none of them really tell me what any of them are either. So I was very upset with this one. This is something I actually had to do the other day, and I'm not impressed. So yeah, view fact sheet, and it hovers over other stuff. So if they made any sense at all, I would need to see what those were to see what I might want to do next. And it's the same for this. I hover here and it says copy, but it's covering what I'm doing. So like the context of the page is gone because now I'm like, hang on, what is it I'm looking at? What am I going to copy and what's that going to do? So it's better to have the labels on the screen than it is to cover them over with a tooltip. Martin, pass over to you for this bit.
Sure. Yeah. So the tooltips can be problematic for a number of reasons. I think the main reason is that they can only kind of give you a certain amount of information. When you hover over a trigger and display a tooltip, there's not a great deal you can put in there. You're covering up content on the page, which is a problem in and of itself. But then you've got the thing where you don't want to be putting too much in there. Also, how do you communicate with screen readers? You've got the problem where if you take your pointer off of the trigger to maybe select the text, I know that I'm guilty of this. I like to kind of, as I'm reading something, I like to kind of highlight the text as I'm going. So I would continually lose this because every time you take the pointer off of the tooltip, the tooltip would disappear. Which also kind of presents problems with having links and things like that, and other kind of interactive elements inside there. I've seen sort of workarounds where people have used focus states, so it's there when you focus on the icon, but again, that kind of has its own drawbacks. I've also seen people keeping the tooltip displayed if the hover is moved along that delicate little triangle from along and onto the kind of tooltip area. Again, we're talking about sort of making this inclusive, and that's not good for someone with kind of motor impairment, that kind of thing, or kind of tremors. So it's a big ask, really. And then you've also got the problem of touch. How do touch users use it? And then what about a user who's on their laptop in the back of the car again? That's problems all around.
Mm-hmm. And then we use them quite a lot for errors. So I think I said earlier, we use them for loads of different things. So tooltips as errors, you can see one here. errors, as we know as content designers, need to clearly explain the problem and what the user needs to do to solve it. So squishing a short error message into a tooltip makes it harder to know what to do to finish the thing you're trying to do. So you can see here, one or more conditions needs to be resolved before you can make this rule active. I don't know how, this is just in a table. I don't know what I need to do with that. I don't know what this necessarily means. I'm looking around for like conditions or resolved or active, and none of those actions are on the page. So, and maybe they're underneath, I don't know. So that's one of the problems. And this is a field that's kind of similar, but without hovering. So before you've hovered, we're assuming here that that you need to hover. There's nothing here to tell you that you need to hover. It's just telling you that something's wrong and you don't necessarily know how to fix that. So I've just stuck on a little good scenario here of an inline error styling, which is, I've just nicked it from Gov. And it's where the error message is just on the page. So that would be the fix for this. Rather than putting a tooltip in, you would just stick the error message between the input label and the input field, and then they can understand what it is they need to do and select it. So it's super simple. But there's a sideline to this that Martin realized recently.
Yeah, actually, before I do, this was something that was really interesting that I've managed to strong arm the design system team into changing this pattern, and we have got a new one on the horizon, which is going to follow more of this GDS. This GDS stuff, everything's just presented on it in a way convincing, because I could think that users like a very condensed interface with the way until you hover. But yeah, accessibility, one front. But yeah, the little thing that's
I think we're losing you slightly,
really interesting
Martin.
When I came across a tweet.
Oh, I think we're losing you slightly.
Oh dear, can you?
Yeah.
I'll take my video off, and hopefully that helps with
better.
bandwidth. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Good. So probably better. You can't see my ugly mug anyway. So, but yeah, this was a tweet I came across, I think a week or two ago, that kind of illustrated this point nicely. And I had no idea that this was a thing. I know that depending on where you go, icons can mean different things. Gestures can mean different. I remember there was an HSBC advert that ran many years ago that had different hand signals and things that meant different things in different cultures, and some were positive, some were very negative. All that kind of thing. But yeah, apparently in Sweden, a tick mark is used to signify something that needs some attention, and so it's often something that's wrong. So this tweet here says, struggling with an icon, as one does. The struggle here is that the check mark is common for OK, ready, or done. In Sweden, it has historically been used to mark wrong answers on tests, pretty much the opposite, really. So now I need more understanding on how big of a conflict this really is. So I think that's a nice lesson in making sure that we're pairing an icon with some text in case the icon, the meaning of the icon isn't clear in and of itself. I think as well, from a localization point of view, the example that Josie's used here are really interesting with the red and the green. I think the red is used more for negative or actions that are going to be are incorrect, and then the green is used for positive. So that might be a kind of a more sort of European or Western take on that. Where if you go to countries like China, red is a very positive color. So the opposite might be true. So again, not relying on color, not relying on icons either.
Yeah, totally. And then back to you again down here.
Oh yeah, so this is an interesting one as well. Again, this is one of my little things that I use as a guide if I'm ever looking to critique a design pattern that's being used. Generally, if it's not in HTML, then it's not important enough or useful enough to use. What I mean by that is that I guess HTML is a way to give meaning to your content. So if something's a paragraph, it gets P tags, which signify a paragraph. If something is a heading, it gets the H element. and that has a number next to it to tell machines, I guess, which then convey that on to users in the end, or maybe it's for search engines, that kind of thing. But you get like a level. So heading level 1 would be H1, heading level 2, which would be the kind of document outline idea. Heading level 2 would be nested inside that H1. That would be H2. So HTML gives content meaning for users and machines, search engines and things. So yeah, having to build a new element with ARIA. An ARIA is a kind of an extension of HTML, which is primarily for screen reader use. So if we're looking to kind of extend HTML to the point that it can't do it natively in and of itself, then things start to get a bit flaky. So we need to make sure that in the first instance we rely on HTML. The two closest elements we've got there are things, maybe a link, but then a link takes a user to a new page. That's what's the expected behavior of a link. It could be a button, maybe that's a bit more appropriate. It triggers something on the page, but then the behavior of a button is that you focus on it, you click it. Hovering isn't something that's built into how a button works by default. So what is a tooltip? It's not a link, it's not a button, there's no tooltip element. So yeah, maybe it's something that we shouldn't have, because there are cleverer people than me, way cleverer people than me on the HTML working group that have considered this, and in the like 30 years or so that we've had HTML, nobody's thought, yeah, let's add tooltip to the arsenal that we have there. So yeah, probably one to avoid. I think as well that contributes to the fact that there's no standardized behavior. So one person's tooltip might behave different to another's. So yeah, there's no kind of coming together of behavior with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm in the group of burn the tooltips. No, thank you. So that brings us on to emojis. Emojis are a kind of icon, but they're obviously also not, and they're used a lot in conversational ways. So emojis, are they evil or genius? We had a colleague of ours, Martin, who couldn't make the original session, but he said, since discovering we can put emoticons into content, they're mostly evil, right? Your data has been lost, crying face. They do look kind of nice, added to the label for public holidays in Sage People, though, Christmas tree. So Martin, go ahead.
Yeah, I've put my video back on, I'm afraid, so hopefully my internet connection will stand up to this, but let me know if not. Yeah, emojis are an interesting one. I guess the spoiler here is use them in the same way that you would any other icon. But I'll start with a kind of a look through how they've evolved. For any of you that are as old as me, it started out by using colons and closing parentheses and yeah, all sorts of weird characters to kind of construct something that looked a little bit like something that kind of added a bit of character. So this example here, you've got a colon and a closing parenthesis, which is a smiley face. So I guess the initial thing there that you might think about is, what would a screen reader say? In some cases, it would say colon, closing parenthesis, or closing bracket. In other cases, it will recognize them. You can add emojis to your kind of library and give them an explanation. But again, you're asking a lot for users to do that just to satisfy your obscure use of ASCII characters. So yeah, it might say smiley face, it might not. I think VoiceOver, which is the screen reader that's built into Mac and iPhones and iPads, it knows what a smiley face is if it has a little line, like a little dash connecting. So the nose, if it has a nose on that sideways face, but if it doesn't have a nose, it won't know what it is. So yeah, be very careful. So I guess the other thing is as well that if someone isn't using a screen reader but they're looking at the screen and they see a colon and a closing bracket, what on earth does that mean? Unless you kind of tilt your head to the side and you're like, all right, okay, I understand there. So visually it's not certain or necessarily going to be understood, so better to avoid. The nice thing though is that they often get converted by an operating system into an emoji. So you might type the colon and the bracket, and then it'll, and as soon as you press space to move to a new word, it gets converted into a little, I think it's called a simple smile, it depends on the operating system and things, but it will convert it to an emoji which conveys the similar kind of meaning. Emojis themselves are the kind of evolution of emoticons, where we have little cartoons basically which convey meaning. Again, not perfect though. There's some things to bear in mind. That meaning can't be guaranteed. There are certain emojis that people use that might mean something, and to one person and not another. For example, I quite like the color blue, so sometimes I use a blue heart. Apparently the blue heart means something to do with cycling or something. Again, I'm not quite sure, but it's something positive to do with people who are big on cycling to work and that kind of thing, and the environment. Again, I had no idea. It could also be, who knows, political. It's one of those things you never quite know. So using it should be used with caution, really, because the meaning might be one thing to one and another for another. Oh yeah, NHS love. There you go. But yeah, so the other problem, potential problem with emojis is they look different on different platforms and different operating systems. So one emoji on an emoji on an Apple machine might look different to one on a Microsoft machine. Google has their own take on them. Twitter, again, that's an app within an operating system, but they have their own emoji set. Samsung have one as well for their Android devices. The list goes on. There are all sorts of different variants, and sometimes the faces might look slightly angry, sometimes they look friendlier. It depends. So trying to convey meaning with an emoji can be tricky there. Something interesting that I've encountered is that they get read differently by screen readers on different platforms. So Slack, I don't know if you know that there's a shorthand for those of you who use Slack. You can press the colon character and then start typing a word after that, and what it'll do is it'll kind of look for an emoji that kind of matches that word. So they've got their own shorthand there. When reading those as a screen reader user, you actually read the shorthand. You get read the shorthand to you. You don't actually get the official Unicode Consortium meaning from them. So yeah, just be wary that the meaning might be different, conveyed differently. Also, a big thing is that new emojis come out. Josie and I were talking about the otter emoji, which she's a big fan of, with the little stone floating on its back. That's relatively new. So if you were to send that to, I mean, not that Josie would know my mum, but if you were to send that to my mum, who hasn't upgraded her phone in about 4 years, then she would just get probably like a little rectangle that would mean nothing. So, or a question mark or something like that. So she wouldn't know what you were trying to say with that. So as an extra, fine. But yeah, actually, talking of updating operating systems, emojis are I think one of the biggest drivers for people updating operating systems, just to get those new emojis. Never mind security upgrades or fancy power user features. Just emojis are everything to a lot of people. But then if their friends haven't upgraded, their friends aren't going to see the otter. So just be aware of that. And finally, something that's quite interesting is that for those sort of type geeks amongst you, emojis are actually ligatures in a lot of cases. So a ligature is where you have, say, an F and an L together in a typeface, and the F will lead directly into the L, so they'll become one character, which is often a very nice way to lead the eye from through the word. Emojis use the same kind of principle. So what they do is they take separate emojis, separate emojis or Unicode characters, and then they kind of make a ligature out of them all. So in this example here, you've got a man, a woman, a boy, and a girl, and together they make a family emoji that consists of a man, a woman, a boy, and a girl. And again, that could be made up of different people, 2 boys, 2 girls, 2 men, 2 women, the combinations, 1 child. So yeah, if you in some programs, if you press backspace when you're on the family emoji, it will kind of delete one of the people, which is quite sinister, but you can you can sort of see the parts disappearing as it goes back to the original, that one that was made up. So, and this is more obvious with things like skin color and the newer gender specific emojis. So yeah, sometimes if you send an emoji to someone that has a dark skin tone, they might see a person, and then they might see like an emoji of the color that best matches that skin tone, rather than the ligature. So just to be aware of that. So emojis are never entirely reliable. Good to support content, but in and of themselves, should be used with caution.
Yeah, we were talking as well, weren't we, about the labels that you get. So I often use the woman gesturing no, which on iPhone is this. Sometimes that is relevant to life. But I never use the skin colours because it just makes the label so much longer. So you end up with like woman gesturing no, skin tone medium 3 or something like that. And I can't imagine having that read to me and trying to work out what that looks like or what that means. So that's the reason that I usually try not to use those. I think the first time I realised as well was when I was using Figma and I was leaving a comment, because when you do it on Figma, you can choose an emoji in the comments, but it will kind of give you, I think it's the shorthand, it starts with a colon and ends with a colon. And I would put the just general, nice, happy, polite, but not too crazy smiling face, because some of them are a bit over the top. But then I realised when that comes up, it says slightly smiling face. And when someone sent that to me for the first time and I realised, I was like, slightly smiling, is she okay? Are we friends? Is everything all right? Did that not go as well as I thought? So since then, I've been really kind of wary of what it looks like to me, what it might look like to someone else, and how it actually is read. So it is a minefield, isn't it? And in terms of using it sort of in our UI, I think right now I would be scared because I wouldn't want to, there's so many things to consider. And also I think it depends on like what it is that you're doing. If it's Facebook and it's fun and it's just social, you're probably fine, I would say. Whereas in Sage, we're talking about people trying to get their accounting done or pay their employees. And do you really want kind of a crying face because your data has been lost? You know, that might be taken obviously differently than just a serious message. So yeah, I think it's a really cool question that Martin asked. And I think that's probably the end of our talk, isn't it, Martin? So I'll just scroll down to our resources. So thank you from me and Martin. And we've just put some resources on here and you should be able to access this. So I will just send you a link to this board, and feel free to listen to the whole podcast and use Funkify. So that's where you can imitate different impairments, so visual impairments and motor impairments and all sorts of different things on lots of different websites. And then there's a cool article that Martin wrote about why he stopped using, and I don't know how to pronounce it now. I've got myself into that sentence. You say it.
ASCII, I think.
ASCII.
Well, I don't quote me on that.
So why I stopped using ASCII art, and it's about emojis versus ASCII art. So that's cool too. And I think that's all from us, unless you've got anything else to say, Martin.
No, thank you. Just feel free to reach out to us on Twitter or any other platform you might be able to find us. And yeah, we'd love to continue the chat just now in questions or later if anything pops to your mind.